Walking with Dinosaurs is by far the most iconic and important dinosaur documentary. Blending top-notch animatronics with groundbreaking CGI for the time, Walking with Dinosaurs set the groundwork for paleomedia in the 21st century. But science marches on, and in terms of paleontological accuracy, that clock ticks very fast. The depictions of the various primordial subjects in this show have definitely shown their age in the 25 years since the documentary has come out, and in some cases, they're completely unlike our modern understanding of the original animal. But with those flaws, this documentary is still one of my favorites. First though, I want to give my quick review of Walking with Dinosaurs. Until Prehistoric Planet, I always considered this the most high-quality dinosaur documentary ever made, and in some ways it still is.
Spread out below him will be the majesty and spectacle of a world ruled by dinosaurs.
Other documentaries that attempt this format either personify the animals extensively, struggle on a storytelling and conceptual level, or they're just plain old dog shit.
But scientists now know something else. That raptors communicated using quick hand gestures.
What?! Walking with Dinosaurs managed to use actual techniques from modern wildlife documentaries, compelling stories around certain individuals without making them into characters. The variety of different animals shown, including their non-dinosaur counterparts, as well as the flora and geologic elements of an ecosystem, really bring the paleo environments to life, which is a necessity for this type of format. In terms of the designs, pretty much every single one of the animals that were featured became the definitive version in the public consciousness. The main problem is the idea of evolutionary succession. There's this school of thought that prevails this and Walking with Monsters especially, that the later clade is superior. We see this with the Triassic animals being supposedly outcompeted by the far more adaptable dinosaurs.
This world has been ruled by one group of giant reptiles for over 50 million years. But these ancient creatures have had their day.
Same thing with pterosaurs being pushed to extinction by the birds. It's powerful storytelling, I'll give you that. But unfortunately, in terms of a scientific perspective, it doesn't make too much sense. But all in all, flaws aside, I love this show so much. It was my childhood, and it holds up still. The first episode is called New Blood, and takes place in the Chinle Formation of the Upper Triassic of Arizona. Many now iconic animals make an appearance in this episode, and it was one of my favorites when I was a kid. And today we'll be looking at the 3 genera that you guys voted for several months ago. Holy shit, that's not... oh my god, I need to get on this. So the episode starts and ends with its titular dinosaur character, Coelophysis bowery, or Zabori. I don't know. The design is very striking, and is what most people think of when they hear Coelophysis. The main thing I noticed, though, is how ridiculously gracile the model is. Coelophysis was definitely a slender animal, and you can see this in many paleo reconstructions. However, slender animal doesn't mean, help me, I need a sandwich level skinny. And this seems like a bit of the dinosaur renaissance level shrink wrapping coming to light, which the show is pretty good about normally. Because of this, the neck is very skinny and appears overtly long. The neck was about twice as long as the head, and roughly the same length as the torso. The tail is also too short, which may be a result of the shrunken torso, but it should be the length of the body. The legs also have several proportional issues, with the metatarsals being too long compared to the tibia, and more importantly, the arms are pronated. Come on guys, we know this. The head also has a bunch of flaws. The teeth in the premaxilla number too many, with only 4 being known, and the eye is too far back, and because they put the orbit farther back, they had to push everything else back behind it, which means that the ear is now in the neck. The tooth row on the bottom jaw is also a bit too far back. It goes into the syringular, I believe, which doesn't make sense. The mouth only has teeth from the dentary. In terms of integument, it's a bit outdated. We have indirect scale impressions from the fossil Ichthyotaxon Grelator, which is a small theropod that is roughly equivalent in size and time to Coelophysis. They show the same repeating polygonal reticulae that modern birds have on the bottoms of their feet. However, a 2020 study by Lovelace et al. Looked at the biomechanical range of different insulation types of Coelophysis using computer modeling techniques and varying Chinle formation climates. They found an insulated or semi-insulated Coelophysis would have been needed to survive the temperatures there, which were reasonably cold. All in all, a lot of missing details on this beloved bobble-headed boy, but it has a soft spot. And while the drawing's happening, we may as well discuss some paleobiology. There are two distinct morphs of Coelophysis, which may be an example of sexual dimorphism. Differences include there being a gracile and robust morph, as well as different extents of sacral fusion. There isn't really any of this shown in the episode, as all of the models appear to be exactly the same, including the babies, which wouldn't make sense. Ontogenetic variation is a thing. In terms of behavior, gregariousness in Coelophysis, in the way that it's shown, may have been possible. We see loose gangs of Coelophysis that don't ever really cooperate, constantly squabbling and only congregating when extenuating circumstances occur. The large amounts of associated Coelophysis remains of different ages could be evidence of this, albeit completely circumstantial. There is also, of course, one of this animal's claim to fame, that it was a supposed cannibal. Despite the most compelling evidence being wrongly interpreted, with small reptile bones being mistaken for young Coelophysis, or an adult being deposited on top of a juvenile, making it appear to be stomach contents, there is still a high likelihood that this behavior was exhibited. We see this in modern animals all the time, and because in the episode this happens during a very harsh period of high stress, which is a Triassic drought, it makes complete sense that they would do this. So it's very well done, but again, the adult and the baby shouldn't look exactly the same. Next up is the most highly requested of the three animals, and I'm pretty sure it was my favorite as well, the loricotin Postosuchus kirkpatricki. See, one thing that I find very interesting is that out of all of the animals in Walking with Dinosaurs, besides maybe, I don't know, the Quetzalcoatlus, but I'm not going to beat that dead horse again, Postosuchus has changed the most recently, because the complete proportional anatomy is wrong. We now know it was an obligate biped, and if we look at its skeleton, you can see why we would think that now. Back then, it was assumed that because of the strong shoulder blades, that it would have been able to carry its heft on its front legs, and we see Kenneth Branagh in the show talk about that, about how it could rear up on its hind legs, but it was primarily quadrupedal. But this just isn't true. If you look at the actual proportions, the combined length of the ulna, radius, and humerus is only slightly longer than the femur. The entire arm is only slightly longer than the thigh. And the hands are absolutely tiny, although the first digit is semi-opposable with a large curved claw, while the rest were kind of little nubs. The show has a bit of a humpbacked appearance as well, but this was due to Long and Murray in 1995, where some reconstructions had a humpbacked appearance because of a chimera with a larger individual's cervicals being used. And we also don't really see its tall neural spines that prominently, and it wouldn't have had a sail or anything like that, but it would be sort of noticeable. And the osteoderms are a bit inaccurate. Postosuchus had a rowed pair of osteoderms for each dorsal. We see more than one row, which, to my knowledge, isn't correct. However, I'm just happy they didn't go the crocodilian route. Now, another thing we have to talk about is the head. The head just seems generally too long. Some people have compared Postosuchus's skull's depth to an almost abellisaurid condition, and it seems to have pretty good keratinization around its features. I've seen reconstructions with this sort of ridge around the jugal area, and I don't know what that's based on because not everything has it, but the reconstruction and the description has it, so I'm gonna use that as well. And of course, we also see that it should have lips. And for those of you who are surprised by this, because it's a pseudosuchian, if we use the same logic we used on theropod dinosaurs for this, where we looked at the foramina and their arrangement around the tooth row of the animal and compared it to modern animals, where we found that it was closest to the lepidosaur condition, and if we just look at phylogenetic bracketing in a larger scale, because after all, Neosuchians are derived archosaurs, and they're almost exclusively semi-aquatic. Of course, you have exceptions like Bovirosuchus, Barenasuchus, and so on, but for the most part, they're too derived, and their skull shapes are way too different to make an accurate assumption. That's why it's most likely that they used lips, because of not just the oral arrangement, but also the whole tooth desiccation scenario, and just general hygiene. Something that surprised me when I was doing research was that Postosuchus may have had a weaker bite than you would expect. This is because in 2023, a functional analysis was performed of the morphology of the related, but not that closely related, Saurosuchus, and it was shown to have a relatively mild bite. If we look at Postosuchus' skull, it was probably a stronger biter because it had significant buttressing around the maxilla and jugal regions of the skull, and it had a shelf around the surangular. And apparently, according to Lipperini and Schultz 2013, a reconstruction of the thigh musculature of Prestosuchus has revealed that the limb musculature of Postosuchus may have been superficially similar to that of theropod dinosaurs, unlike the one here, which looks more like a freshwater crocodile. In terms of the actual behavior that we see in the show, I have some doubts on one thing, and also a bit of a continuity error I'm very bothered about. So first of all, when the Postosuchus is hunting the Placerius in its intro, we see it make a giant mammalian-like bellow before attacking the Placerius, which completely gets rid of the element of surprise. And that same Placerius supposedly inflicted a tusk wound on the Postosuchus' thigh. It died from its injuries, and I can't for the life of me find where it did it. Where is the tusk mark? Where did that come from? What? And then it had to die one of the saddest anime deaths of all time. Why are there so many of those in Walking with Dinosaurs? You know, I've been wondering why this looks wrong. There's something about it, I think it's because I made the neck too long compared to how long it should be. It looks like it's about half. It should be only half the length of the torso, but it's slightly longer. And because of that, the arms are too far back. And
I don't know, maybe I'm going crazy from looking at this too long, but I'm gonna try to fix it.
Now, our final animal is Plateosaurus trossingensis. Now, I'm saying trossingensis because Engelhardt isn't actually diagnostic enough to be considered the type anymore. In terms of the design, there is a very similar problem to the Postosuchus, where it's depicted as a quadruped, but it's not. It can't be a quadruped. But this is actually almost more concrete, because in a study done in 2009, we see that they can't even pronate their arms. But Plateosaurus and presumably other non-eusauropod sauropodomorphs couldn't pronate their arms. The head is also a bit too tapered. It should be more robust and deep. And the neck just seems to be a little bit off. I can't really put my finger on it. It has a very hadrosaur-like bow plan. Like, you can see, like, if you compare it to a modern restoration of an Edmontosaurus, it is very clearly the same idea. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't research as extensively for Plateosaurus simply because I just wanted this video to be over, man. It's taking so long, and there isn't as many good open access papers. So if you want to learn more about it and a video that does much better justice on it, just watch your Dinosaurs Are Wrong's archived video on it. Also, it shouldn't be here. It's not a Chilney Formation animal. It lived in Europe.